Welcome back to another episode of Reels Like the First Time, where I am on my journey to experience everything film has to offer, the good and the bad, all for the very first time. I'm your host, Allison Salamone, and joining me today to discuss 1996's Fargo is guitarist for the Orlando-based rock band Felicity, Drew Rapier. Hi, Drew.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Great, I'm great.
I'm so excited to hear. Big fan of Felicity. I've been really found you guys on TikTok. My old I'm 36-year-old emo kid, so my knees my knees are a little too sore to go to many shows anymore. But
I
you
mean,
know,
that's music. I mean, the music you grew up listening to is music we grew up listening to and loving, and we just make music that we would want to listen to. So whenever
yeah,
people compliment us, it's a big compliment because we're our own biggest fans. So
yeah. Oh,
yeah,
absolutely. And congrats on what over 100K on TikTok now
yeah,
with
yep,
followers. That's huge.
yeah.
So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
But instead of talking music, I have you here to talk movies. I saw again in one of your TikToks that you have a super cool Star Wars guitar. So I was like, I bet
Yes.
that guy likes movies.
Yeah. We have this when we go on tour, you're trying to pass time in the car, and we have this like kind of like movie game where you'll say an actor and you'll say Mark Hamill was in Star Wars with Carrie Fisher, and then the next person has to go, Carrie Fisher was in this movie with this actor and this actor, and you're not allowed to say a sequel to an original
Ooh,
movie, and you can't repeat any actor until someone can't come up with one, and
yeah,
I'm undefeated in my band.
I love that.
Most of my bandmates are out almost immediately. Me and Mike, our bass player, he lasts a little while, but when I was my first real job when I was probably 16 was at Blockbuster, and that's very
Nice.
old fashioned. But I worked there all the way through college, really, just because it was like the only job with the I didn't make any money, but the perks was I could like
Yeah.
watch all the movies, and I was back in the day when you could burn DVDs, and I had like the binders, like the horror section of Blockbuster. I had a binder
I
of, and
love it.
burn every movie in the store. So I'm big into movies. Store a lot
I
of stuff.
love that. Speaking of which, like with that games, you should definitely check out this. You can get it on Amazon this game called Cinephile, and
Okay,
that's literally all it is. Is you
cool.
pull out a card and has an actor and a movie on it. The way that like we play it
Yeah,
is you literally just like you go to the next person. So if I say, okay, I'm giving my husband whatever the actor is, he has
yeah.
to name a movie that they're in, and then it goes to the next person. They have to name an actor that's in that
Yeah,
movie,
okay,
and
cool.
so on and so.
We'll spin on
So
it.
super fun game. But kind of going back to you talked about having it working at Blockbuster and everything. The first question I always love to ask, and especially to help for me to get to know my guests and for my tens of viewers and listeners to get to know my guests, where do you think or where did your love for movies kind of stem from?
Not really sure. I really thought when I was a kid, I wanted to be a filmmaker. I think that was always something that could have been a journey for me. I went to actually college, like going to a media school, wanting to get into filmmaking, but they didn't really have a filmmaking program, and for whatever reason. But when I was little, just going to the movie store, I think, and renting movies on the weekend, and that was like a big, like the best thing about the weekend was like Friday night,
Yeah.
maybe going to the local. We had one called Stop and Go Video in my hometown in small town in Maine, and just renting movies and always loving the format of movies. And my dad taking me to the theater every weekend to see whatever the big movie was, whether it was Wild Wild West or Men in Black or whatever Will Smith was coming out that month. Um,
Oh man, Wild Wild
and
West. What a pull.
when that came out, I thought I was like, this is the best movie that's ever been made. It doesn't get better than this. But yeah, and so that, and then me and my friends, one of the first big Christmas gifts I ever got when I was little was like a high 8 or digital 8 camcorder. Me and my friends would make our own movies without even editing software. We would just like record and stop was like and rewind and then re-record over.
Uh-huh.
It was like the edit that turned into us learning how to edit videos. My friend would like every time we had to do a school project, if they would let us like show it and fill like video format, we would do that. And me and my friends would make our own sequels to movies like Tremors. We'd make our own like Tremors movie, or we'd make our own sequel to Ghostbusters, or
That's amazing.
that. So yeah,
Tremors was the first movie I covered on this podcast back when it was first when it was called You've Never Seen It, and it was audio only. That was the very first movie I watched for the
good
first time
start.
with co-host Jesse.
Yeah, yeah,
Great flick.
I love that movie.
um That's awesome though. And I'm sure, your filmmaking enjoyment definitely kind of helps roll into all this content creation you guys are doing now with, TikTok and Reels and everything. So that's awesome. So when I sent you my list and asked you to be on the show, what was it? Why Fargo? Why was this the one that you wanted to cover with me?
Yeah, I think it was just there was a lot of movies claim. I mean, I could have probably done almost any movie on it, but I do love the Coen Brothers, and Big Lebowski is my favorite movie, and then this is
Hmm.
probably like maybe I don't know. It's hard to pick, but this is definitely one of the best Coen Brothers movies, and I love all of them. And I was like, it would be cool to just be able to talk Coen Brothers. If we can't do
Yeah.
Big Lebowski, then let's do Fargo, and just an awesome movie. I love movies that um can kind of be like two genres at once. And I feel like that's kind of like my band. Like we have like really heavy music that's kind of like
Hmm.
on the verge of metal, and then we have like really happy pop punk stuff sometimes too. And so it's like I love movies that have duality to them. One of my favorite movies is like Evil Dead 2, which is very
Hmm.
like a horror movie, but it's very like silly. Or Cabin in the Woods,
Right.
which is kind of like silly and horror. And Fargo's like that, and a lot of Coen Brother movies are like that, where they can be very serious, and there's absolutely nothing funny happening, but it comes off somehow
Hmm.
like it's in the comedy section at the movie store, and Big Lebowski is kind of like that, and Fargo is kind of
Hmm.
like that, and some of the other ones they do, but yeah, I think that's kind of why.
They do a dark comedy really, really well, the
Yeah,
Coen brothers for
yeah.
sure. 'Cause that's really kind of the way that I would describe it. I actually had a really good time watching this movie. I didn't realize that this was the one that got Frances McDormand her first Oscar.
Yep.
Which watching it, I can completely understand why.
Nailed that
Nom
accent.
Oh my god, the Minnesota nice accent through the whole thing between her and William H. Macy is phenomenal. And she's playing pregnant, and, like, when she's scolding, Peter Stormare, like, at the end of it, you're, like, getting, like, "I'm not mad, I'm disappointed"
Mom
mom vibes
vibes.
from
Yeah,
her. Yeah,
yeah.
and she does it so so well. Oh, I'm dying. Um, sorry.
No.
Yeah, so nominated for 7 Oscars, including Best Picture, Best Director, Best Supporting Actor, basically all the big main ones. But it only won for Frances McDormand for Best Actress, and then of course Best Original Screenplay because the
Yeah,
Coen brothers are some of the best screenwriters. I mean,
for sure.
I didn't realize how many movies by the Coen brothers I have seen
Mhm.
until I started IMDbing everything. And then
Mhm.
of course I go on to learn things like Frances McDormand is married to Joel Coen. I
Yep.
had no idea. That was fun to learn, which I got many eye roll emojis from friends and my husband when I said, "Oh, hey, guess what I learned today?"
Yeah.
Um, but this movie was this one was a really fun one, so I'm glad I finally got to discover it. Do you remember the first time that you saw it?
I definitely didn't see it like in 1996,
Right.
but I did see it probably when I was in high school, and I do remember. I don't remember my first time seeing it, but I do remember it was when I was like becoming a film buff and working at
Mhm,
Blockbuster. One of the ones I had always wanted to see, and I think I had seen maybe part of my parents watching it, and it seemed at the time being little like a kind of dark, disturbing movie. And then the older they see it as an adult, and it definitely is dark and disturbing, but not. I don't know. You truly can appreciate it in a different way as an adult because it's very suspenseful. It's really there's a lot of tension building, but then all of a sudden
yeah.
there's just moments of just lightheartedness, silliness that kind of take you that like bring you back down to earth. Where like
Mhm,
another Coen Brothers movie like No Country for Old Men is just like suspenseful from front to back, and then this one like continues to like keep you in check with silliness, and one
mhm.
like Big Lebowski is more silly with some suspenseful moments in it. But so I think it's like a cool balance of what they can do, um, and I know it's probably their most successful movie too, like the one that really put them on the map. Because I
Yeah.
think Lebowski might have come out before it, and it was kind of a cult classic, but didn't really do well at the box office. Where Fargo was so critically acclaimed, it was a big success, and having the Oscar nominations definitely helped too.
Oh, for sure. Um, I love what you said about, like, there's suspense and then it, like, breaks up into, like, some comedy. But what I think I love even more in this movie is, like, when the shit starts hitting the fan, it just, like, nonstop just escalates, and I honestly feel like while I really liked William H. Macy's performance, and I still think it was deserving of a nomination, I feel like Steve Buscemi kinda got the
Yeah.
shaft with it,
Yeah,
like, not
and
being nominated for anything.
most people think of Steve Buscemi as this comedic actor, and he is comedic in the movie. But it just goes to show he's like a great actor, and um,
Mhm,
I think perfect casting for both him and Peter Stormare, the two like villains in the movie. Because you're like sometimes feel like you're not entirely rooting against them for some reason. Like
mhm.
I don't know, the Coen Brothers are really good at that. Like all their villains and even people who are complete dirtbags in movies, somehow you end up relating to them or liking them in some way. And William H Macy is just like these. I love these movies too, where the characters just keep just making dumb decisions, keep getting
Yeah.
themselves. Like Uncut Gems was like that. If you've seen that movie,
Yeah,
where it's just like
oh
if
my
you
god.
just stop, dude, just stop.
Giant. That movie is I haven't watched it since I saw it in theaters because it was like a 2-hour anxiety attack,
Yeah, and
and
I
I
feel like
couldn't
Fargo is
do
kinda
it.
similar, not as
Yeah.
bad, but, like, a little bit similar, or No
Yeah,
Control
yeah, yeah.
Mental is a 2-hour anxiety attack too, you know, so the Coen
Yeah.
Brothers are really good at that kind of pacing and whatnot, and, the score to Fargo it's, like, so depressing and scary, and, growing up in Maine, like, they nailed maybe that's why I'm a big earring guy, and so I'm wearing my
Uh-huh.
Ice Cube earring for Fargo tonight because I grew up in Maine, and, man, you feel cold watching this movie, and that's
Yeah.
really how it is. And when he's trying to scrape the ice off his car and freaking out, it's like, oh, that was me
Yeah.
every morning, like 10 minutes late to work already and having to scrape the ice off my car.
The amount of my husband is originally from, South Side Chicago,
Mm.
so all of his friends and everyone that are still up there that all have, like they always talk about, like, that you when you buy a car now, you have to get one that has, like, remote start
Yep.
for that reason
Yep.
because it's too goddamn cold. Um, I love that you said you love earrings because that's my thing too, are
Yeah.
earrings. I'm wearing the bugle ones that I told you I had gotten from the the vending machine. I
Yep.
love vending machine earrings.
I do too. I get those like this one in Orlando I go to every time I see it.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. We do it all the time. We go to, the one in Hourglass Brewing all the time in
Yep.
Long Beach.
Yep.
It's our favorite place to go, and every time I walk in there, I buy a pair of earrings. It's a problem.
Mhm.
It's not a problem. It could be worse. I could be, like, spending
Yeah.
my money on, like, drugs.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
know, it's there's worse things in life, to be worried about than that. So, well, kind of speaking of the Coen Brothers, so you said The Big Lebowski is obviously your favorite movie by them, but do you have, like, a top 3 Coen Brothers movies?
Yeah, so I think Big Lebowski might be my favorite movie of all time. If I had to pick one, it's like impossible for movie buffs to truly pick
Yeah.
like a favorite movie. But it's one movie I can put on any like Fargo. I might have to be
One
in the mood for Big Lebowski. I can put on any time, and I've probably seen it a million times. So I would say my favorite movies of all time are probably Big Lebowski, Ghostbusters, and maybe it's really tough because like Star Wars is really, really important to me, but that's like a whole thing.
Sure.
So if I had to, maybe the third one probably maybe be um, maybe Back to the Future. Maybe
Sure. Good choices. I like
yeah,
those.
yeah,
I did like The Big Lebowski. I haven't seen it in a long time, but I have seen it. I love the John Goodman
yeah. Oh,
of
John
Big
Goodman,
Lebowski.
yeah, my favorite character. Yeah,
What happens when you
yeah.
fuck a stranger in the ass?
Just the
Uh,
dialogue and the characters, and if you watch the whole movie, by the end of it, you realize it was entirely pointless and nothing matters and nothing actually happened. But it was
yeah.
such an entertaining ride and so unique and interesting, um, and another movie where just like it just keeps piling and piling and piling on, but then no goes nowhere. And
Right.
Fargo ends with just like her in bed with her husband talking about stamps, and it's like
Yeah. And how
the
he got
end
it
of
he got
the
the prize for, like, he's gonna be on, like, the 3-cent stamp, and
and
it's just that's
yeah,
it.
and No
There's
Country for Old
life.
Men ends with just Tommy Lee Jones at the dinner table talking about a dream he had. It's like these Coen Brothers movies do a great job of just like telling a story and
Mhm.
it not really having an ending. And I think it's kind of like an allegory for like life. Like life doesn't always have a happy ending. Sometimes it
Mhm.
just a bunch of shit happens and then it's over.
Yeah.
And think a lot of their movies that they write are just a bunch of shit happens and it's over and you're just left with end credits and not really be you had a fun time, but there's no actual resolution. There's no storylines actually
Right.
resolved. There, no one ends up happy.
Right.
And that's what I think is cool about the Coen Brothers is most of their movies are like that. Probably almost all their movies are like that. So.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of um Inside Llewellyn Davis
Yep.
as one of their I absolutely love that one. Um I do have the Big Lebowski on like my list of like Coen Brothers films, but I have it as number 2 because I think my favorite might be I really enjoyed this one, but I think my favorite might be No Country for Old
Yeah.
Men. And I think it's because of the Javier Bardem at all,
Yeah.
just with that fucking creepy ass haircut, walking around with just the nail gun, just like the air pressure
For
gun, just
sure. Those would probably be
wild.
my top 3 too. Would probably those two. But I really love Burn After Reading. I feel like that's really underrated. A lot of
Mhm.
people. I mean, I feel like it kind of flew under the radar, but I do love that one, and I really I like not many people have even seen this. There's one called A Serious Man that was it's
Okay.
kind of like the same kind of pacing where it's just a bunch of stuff that happens and it gets stressful, and then it ends and doesn't always make sense in the end. But they just have a really unique screenwriting style, and they really do a good job of casting and really getting the most out of the actors to make actors have
Mhm.
extremely unique performances. Like John Goodman in that. He's never acted like that and had a character like that in anything else. And think about the difference in Steve Buscemi from Big Lebowski to Fargo. There's the
Oh,
difference in character.
100%.
Jeff Bridges playing this like aloof stoner where like he doesn't play that. He's normally like a gruff. Like if you think of like a movie like True Grit or like these
Right.
other movies, Crazy Heart, these movies where he does great acting, or he's great at being like a hero in like Tron and these kids, Starman and stuff. But
Yeah.
really getting unique, and Brad Pitt and Burn After Reading, just like these performances that you don't see the actors give in any other movie, they're able to pull out of people, which I think is what makes them so great.
Yeah. I think, what we're talking about with going kind of talking more about like Steve Buscemi and Peter Stormare and their performances. I think really other than Francis McDormand, I think Steve Buscemi was other like my other like standout for this movie. And it's because of just his absurd, like he gets shot in the face and he drives all the way back to Brainerd with
Yeah,
just like and he walks, he's
all
like,
my
you
face.
should see the other guy, and the way that he's acting it with like how he's
Mhm.
speaking, and he just walks in like all of a sudden Peter Stormare says the woman is dead because she wouldn't stop screaming or she wouldn't be quiet, like just the absurdity
Yeah,
of it all. And I now understand what people are talking about when they talk about
yeah,
the wood chipper scene,
yeah,
which is so nice to be in a world that understands
yeah,
the wood chipper scene
yeah,
at this point in time.
yeah. And it's just absurd things that happens that just is like, okay, might as well
Right.
this be what happens next.
Who just has a wood chipper on their
Yeah.
property too, by the way? Like I
North
wonder, like,
Dakota, I guess you need that.
I guess so. And they're just sitting there. And it's like, and I part of me feels like when like the Coen brothers are writing a movie and they get this absurd idea, I could just see them like sitting there like this is the movie that's in my head about how they write their movies is they have their desk back to each other in like the same room, and like one's typing and then the other one's typing, and then when one has a really good idea they just turn around and laugh about it, and then they
Mhm,
go back to, to what they're doing. Is
mhm,
how I picture them writing the absurd, where it's just like, hey Joel, what do you think about a wood chipper? Like
mhm.
we could do a wood chipper, right?
And there's
I
the
just
visual of it, like what it would look like if someone was being put into a wood chipper and on the white snow being sprayed out hundreds of
right. Right. And then when Peter Stormare's like in the cop car and Frances McDormand just there, she's like, so I guess that was your partner in the wood chipper.
people.
And like the way that she just is so nonchalant about
Mhm,
it
mhm.
is one of the best line deliveries. Um so I'm kind of working on figure out a way to add this segment in, but when I watch these movies, I like to do a big deep dive, and my deep dive is always on Wikipedia. So if it's on Wikipedia, it's true, is what is what we're calling it.
All of
Um, so the movie starts right, and there's this title card that says it's based on true events,
mhm,
but at the end of the movie, it says that there's the disclaimer that everything was fictitious.
mhm.
So it's not actually based on true events. And I guess like finally like 2015, Joel Cohen was like, Nah, none of it was true. It's all like
I'm sure
it's all
someone's been put in
fictional.
a wheelchair before, you know,
I'm
and
sure.
wife's been
I'm
kidnapped before, and some other stuff has happened. So
But, like, why not just make this,
yeah,
a whole thing? And then also, apparently, the Coens weren't initially considering, uh, Macy for the role of Jerry. They wanted him for, like, a smaller part, for, like, a different role, but they were so impressed by his reading that they asked him to come back to read for that. Um,
yeah,
and according to William H. Macy, he was very persistent and like he even like while the Coens were like still having people read for parts, he actually like went out to NYC and told them if they're still auditioning, like they're making a huge mistake and
yeah.
you need to just let me be this role. And I thought that was pretty neat to if it's true, I'd be down for it. Like,
He was right, I'd say, and that movie put him on the map too. And at
yeah.
the time, he was just, I think he was relatively known for, I'm sure, but I mean, that was probably my first time truly recognizing him as a in a performance. And pretty much every movie after that, you probably were like, oh, I remember him from Fargo. Is probably the movie you
Mhm.
remember from. But now he's like one of the most, like he's such a talented actor, and um, you may not recognize him by name, but you could probably name 20 things you've seen him in if you really thought about it. Can
Oh,
He's all
easily.
yeah.
And he's so good at everything that he does. I think he's right. I think he's one of the most I don't know if I would say, like, underrated. I think it kinda depends on who you're talking to, but, like, the stuff that he does and the range that he has, like, the next year, he goes from doing Fargo, and then in '97, he does Boogie Nights.
Yeah.
Um, and then even,
He's
like,
great,
shortly
amazing,
after
like,
that
top tier directors, like, wanting to
yeah.
work with. He's worked with all the best directors in the world because everyone wants him in their movies because he's so good.
Yeah, and then right after Boogie Nights in '99, he works with Paul Thomas Anderson again on Magnolia,
Mhm,
as the quiz kid Donnie Smith, which
mhm.
I think is I'm not a hu I was on board with Magnolia until, like, the last half hour, like, the ending of it happened. I don't know
Yeah.
if you've ever seen it, but it's,
Oh, yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah,
3 and a
yeah,
half yeah,
yeah. Yep, yep.
3 and a half hours long. No desire to go back and rewatch it anytime soon. But between him and Tom Cruise in that movie,
Yeah,
my mind was blown. Like, those are probably 2 of the best performances
for sure.
I've ever seen, and I can at least give Paul Thomas Anderson that. I
Yep.
don't give him much, but I give
That's
him that.
that's one of the lesser acclaimed movies probably for that reason. I love John C. Reilly in that movie too,
He's
because
really
everyone
good in
sees
it.
John C. Reilly as a comedic actor, and that you get to see him being serious, and he's also in Boogie Nights too. But it's
Yeah.
weird because he started out as a serious actor. The first movie I remember seeing John C. Reilly in is a movie called The River Wild, and
Yeah!
Kevin Bacon
With
are like
Kevin Bacon,
bad
right?
guys. And now I see
Yeah.
him, I only think of him as like Dr. Steve Brule and Dewey Cox and
Yeah.
Step Brothers and stuff. And that's all he does now is comedy. But he started out as a very serious, uh, dramatic actor.
Yeah, oh, yeah, yeah. Oh my god, I love The River Wild. That movie's
Yeah, that's another movie that like
insane.
probably no one else has seen. Like very few people have seen. But
My my gaps, I get told all the time, like, my gaps in, like, film just blow people's minds because 'cause I'll, like, have like, I've seen, like, The River Wild, or I've
yeah,
seen, like, some of the most absurd well, because of the show, I've now seen Money Plane, and I've seen,
mm,
got like, I've seen some weird ass movies, but, like, then people are like, "You haven't seen Apocalypse Now, you
yeah,
haven't seen Fargo, like, what is
mm,
wrong with you?"
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
I'm trying. It's
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
best part about it best part about it all is all of the movies that I'm watching for this podcast that my husband has been trying to get me to watch for, like, the 11 years the over a decade we've been together, that he's just like, "Took you having a podcast to
Mm,
finally watch it, huh?" Not
yeah,
me asking you for 11 years, but having
yeah.
her
I'm sure it's awesome though. Getting
It
to see
is,
all
it
these
is.
great movies for the first time. Yeah. I wish I could erase my brain and watch a lot of these movies for the first time. So
It's so much I I always love thinking about, like, what movie would I wish that I could, like, go back and experience for the first time and have an appreciation for? Like, my number one answer is always Almost Famous because I remember and
sure.
I've said it multiple times in this show in general just because of how I first watched it was being friends with a local band in high school, and then that's what they
Yeah.
did after shows, and of course, like, I'm crushing
Well,
on, like, the
yeah.
bass player of that band, so I don't really care about the
Yeah,
movie,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
but we watch it anyway, so, you know, that's one that I wish, like, I could go back and experience for the very first time, which is why I love doing this is because I'm getting to experience these things for the very first time and
Cool.
appreciating them, good, bad,
Mhm.
or indifferent. Like I said, I watched the Andrew Lawrence directed Money Plane. It's so Don't do it.
Have you
Don't do
watched
yourself.
The Room yet?
The Room
The
with
Room.
the oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Technically, before I had this podcast, we did a watch along on the channel about a
I do
year
a whole
ago.
podcast series just about The Room for years, just
Right?
analyzing scenes from it, and then going into the disaster artist and getting the cast members. Like, oh man, but
It's insane.
me and my friends are obsessed with The Room. I've probably seen The Room more than I've seen Big Lebowski, because my friends and I will meet up once a year to just watch The Room, and just
I
you
love
can't
that.
even hear the movie because we're just talking shit about it the entire time and laughing and dying.
Oh, hi, Mark.
Yeah,
Hello.
we
They just
went
did
to a showing and got to meet Mark. Mark was there,
yeah?
and I have a signed script.
Did you go to it did you go to the Enzion? Because I
Yep,
know that he did there
yep.
yeah,
I
I
was
did
there, and
yeah,
you have
yeah.
the signed script of The Room, and it says, "Oh hi, Drew," on this page where it says, "Oh hi, Mark." That's like one of my most prized possessions.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. That's incredible. The Room is fan The Room is the most with when there's a gift somewhere that, good old Sean Wingblade, one of the co-hosts on here on Flick and Reel, made from when, we did our watch along of The Room and the ending happened,
Mm,
and it was a very unnecessarily dramatic ending, and I literally went like this.
yeah.
Like, he made a whole gif out it's out there somewhere, but that was, like, the
Oh,
most absurd thing I've ever watched in my entire life, and I don't regret a second of it
oh
at
no,
all.
no.
So it's fantastic.
Yeah.
But, back into Fargo,
Yes.
did you ever watch the FX show that came
I
from
watched
it?
the first season. I did, and it was awesome.
Okay.
It's one of those ones, like, it's harder and harder the older I get, and the more busy I guess the band gets and work gets. It's harder and harder to just, like, especially watch TV shows. Like movies, I can be like
Right.
2 hours a minute. I'm out. Like Fargo, I loved, and the second season happened, and I was like, I'm gonna watch it. And then it went like third season. I think there's maybe 4 seasons of
I
it,
think it was, like, 4 seasons of it, yeah.
and it was hard enough for even to like make keep up with Game of Thrones and the stuff that's like must. So it was one of those ones that I would love to go back and
Mhm.
watch again, but also one of the ones that maybe because the seasons are like standalone stories, it's not continuations. It doesn't seem
Right.
like high enough on my priority list I've gone to, but I did watch the first season, which was great. Which,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah, I actually haven't obviously, I have not watched the show
yeah.
because, I'm also not gonna lie, this is probably gonna be really, really bad. I for a quick second before I went to go watch Fargo and looked things up and made sure I wasn't looking stupid, I almost got this confused with Twin Peaks, which I
Oh,
also have not seen.
very different, very different.
Very different, I know,
Um,
but I almost got it confused. I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna watch another David
yeah,
Lynch movie."
yeah,
No, I am not.
yeah. And I love the truth. Like I think the only scene that happens in Fargo is when they meet at the beginning. William H. Macy meets Peter Stormare and Steve
Yeah.
Buscemi in Fargo, and the rest of the movie does not take place. None of
The
the else
rest
of the movie takes place in Fargo. It's
everything else is in Minnesota, which I think is
Minnesota
just so
and
funny.
yeah, and then big with the mountain town or wherever it is.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
The home of Paul Bunyan.
yeah,
Um, this movie is full of, like, super iconic scenes that you were talking about we were talking about you were, talking about the score earlier and the soundtrack, which is done so phenomenal. I think why I like the soundtrack so much is it's done in a way that it's not like it's not like a Guardians of the Galaxy where, like, these songs are, like, putting forth the scene, like, all of the music like, the actual music and, like, jams that are in it literally feel like they're playing background music. It's Chuck Mangione is
yeah,
playing in the car dealership, and, um, Jose Feliciano is actually performing while, Steve Buscemi is filming that scene with the hooker, like, up
yeah,
in the balcony, like, that's
mm,
actually, like, a live
yeah,
performance.
yeah. Hmm.
Um
And then the score is just like so depressing and almost it's like a horror movie. I don't know if it's a horror movie, but it's
Mhm,
just like this. It's just hitting your stomach like something bad's about to happen, and they switch back and forth between it, and it's just it's a very like the thing about the North is. Especially when it's very bright and depressing.
mhm,
It's not dark and depressing.
right,
It's get dark a lot, but it's bright and depressing, and that's what the score is like. It's this very dark, depressing sounding, but the screen is so bright with all this snow and
mhm,
reflective off it. And I know this the score just like puts you in a bad mood, and then it will lighten up and be lighthearted with those types of songs, and then the scene will get very
Right.
dark again, the score will get very dark again. But it's very iconic score too. I think that just like sticks with you.
It does. Oh no, I love a good score. I think that's become like one of my biggest things with movies is how good is the soundtrack, how good is the score? And I think this is one that is done because it does. It really I feel like a score could really make or break a movie, right? Like I'm not a fan of like Interstellar. It's not one of my favorite Christopher Nolan
But the
movies.
score,
The Hans Zimmer score is incredible and is what makes that movie more than anything. And I think with this one, with what they did with Fargo, is it really helps elevate it that much more. So like you're feeling everything that these people are feeling. You're feeling the desperation in William H. Macy for whatever he got himself into. You're um
yeah.
feeling, you know, the disappointment in Frances McDormand's voice as she's like talking to Peter Stormare. Um, one of my favorite one another one of my like kind of favorite moments is when you first meet Frances McDormand and she's getting the phone call and she's like, "Oh,
Hmm.
oh, I'll be right over."
Hmm.
And her husband's waking up. He's like, "Oh, what did he say? I'll cook you some breakfast. I'll make it." And it's just like, just it's so
Yeah.
it's a it's and it's a conversation that I feel like you're going to hear and just everything in the background doing is it's there's a reason this one got all of the awards
Yeah.
or got all the nominations out of like all of their movies for sure.
It's one of those movies like Goodfellas that gets all the nominations but doesn't win anything. We really didn't
Right.
win anything. They may give you an actor award, but the movie deserves a lot more than that. And then you look at what won that year, and I do not know what won that year, but I know like the year
I have it pulled
Goodfellas.
up. This was the year that The English Patient was nominated for everything.
Why?
Um, why? Well, here's where I think this is the travesty that I think happened this year is for best sound. The English Patient won for whatever fucking reason. I don't know. I haven't seen it. But the other nominees were Evita, Independence Day,
Mhm.
Twister, and The Rock.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
the Rock, you're not
They're
getting The
loud
Rock best
movies.
sound? Like, that actually, like, involves sound?
Mhm.
So that's probably one of my new, like, favorite when people say, like, "What's your biggest Oscar snub?" I always talk about this movie, Sing Street, not getting nominated for Best Original Song. If you haven't seen it, you need to, it's fucking phenomenal. But they have this it was the year that, like, La La Land was in for everything, and I love La La Land, like, don't get me wrong, but, like, City of Stars winning versus like if this song, Drive It Like You Stole It, or really any of the songs in Sing Street were nominated, that's what should have won. And that's always been like my biggest travesty. And now that I learned that The Rock was nominated for Best Sound and Independence Day was nominated for Best
Fargo.
Sound and didn't win.
Yeah,
Like, or
and I
it
remember
didn't Fargo didn't even win Best Picture. It was the English that was again the English
exactly.
Patient.
And the year Goodfellas was nominated for big Best Picture, I think it lost to Dances with Wolves, and it's like
That sounds about
I'll
right.
watch Goodfellas 100 times before I watch Dance with Wolves once.
I've still never seen Dances with Wolves, and I don't know
Exactly,
if I want to.
exactly. And
I
I
saw
think that
Avatar, and
might
everyone
be the
says that
same year as Pulp
Avatar.
Fiction too. It's like
Yeah,
Pulp
oh
Fiction, Goodfellas, and Dances with Wolves. So I don't really trust the Oscars. I'll watch the nominees.
yeah.
You know, it's there's something going on. It makes no sense.
No, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, I even look at like this past year's Oscars, and I love Everything Everywhere All at Once, and I love everything that
Yes,
it won, and I love Jamie Lee Curtis, but I still think it should have gone to Stephanie Sue over Jamie Lee Curtis. And
yes,
like
yes.
that is your prime example of like how someone campaigns. Like she
Yeah,
campaigned hard. And I'm not mad
yeah,
that she won, but I do think
yeah.
Stephanie Sue deserved it just a
For
little bit
sure.
more.
She
Uh
had so much more screen time, had to do so much more for the movie and
mhm.
so many more lines and everything and every I do believe they got it right. I was gonna be like everything everywhere else is not going to win, but that's okay. It got
Uh-huh.
nominated because it did because that was the best movie, like top to bottom, and it wasn't even close. And when it
Yeah.
did win, I was actually shocked that they got it right because very rarely can a movie like that actually win.
Especially a movie that comes out in February. Most
Yeah.
things that win are towards the end of the year
Yep.
a lot of the time. So the fact that that movie came out in February and, like, had a slow, like, full release and to get to where it was,
Already on
um
streaming by the time, uh,
yeah.
like, people didn't even find out about it until it was nominated for an Oscar, really. I had seen
Mhm.
it 'cause I'm a nerd, but I was
We
I
made
told my friends, "You need to see this movie. I will try I will
100%.
everything."
Oh, it was so good. But it's kind of like this year too. Like everything went to The English Patient. There's also the year of Jerry Maguire. So Cuba
That's
Gooding
the one.
Jr. won
Great movie.
over what, yeah, and I think he had a great pour.
Mhm.
I'm glad I'm okay with Cuba winning that one. Um, only because Steve Buscemi wasn't nominated. I feel like he got shafted. That's my other gripe now that I know what else uh, was nominated
Yeah.
and won. Let's see here. What else we got on here? Who won? What else were they nominated for? So they were nominated. They won best original screenplay over a bunch of shit I don't know except for Jerry Maguire.
Yeah.
um, let's see. Oh, best director again went to The English Patient. Um, let's see. What else did we get here? I think
If the
oh,
Coen Brothers
cinematography again went to English Patient. Like everything just went to the English Patient for the most part,
I
which is
remember that.
stupid.
I mean, it wasn't. I don't remember why. I remember like looking that up and being like, "Why didn't this win more?" And I think it's one of those things where the Coen Brothers were still relatively new, and if they'd released Fargo now,
Right.
they probably would win everything. But
Sure.
it was still kind of unknown, and this really put them on the map so that they could eventually win everything for No Country for Old Men, which is where they won
Yeah.
everything. And Fargo, I think, deserves it more because I think they both deserve it equally. I would say, but No Country for Old Men is obviously great, and the performances that at one point was nominated for, and everything about it's great. But Fargo is like an original screenplay they wrote, and No Country for Old Men is an adaptation. So I think
Right.
Coen Brothers being screenwriters deserve it more for Fargo for like, being such an entertaining, such an iconic, such a unique movie that like you can't compare it to anything that's come before it. And if you make anything that's similar to it, they're just going to be like, well, you're just copying something. You know, you're
100%.
inspired by Fargo because there's never been a movie really kind of like that pacing.
I agree. I mean, just leaning into the way that they leaned into things like the Minnesota nice accent and
Mhm.
like actually having like they had people like on set that were like dialect coaches
Yeah.
for Francis McDormand and William H. Macy
Mhm.
to I literally as soon as I finished watching it, my husband came home and asked me something. I was like, "Yeah, you betcha." And he was like, "God damn it, you watched Fargo." I'm like, "I sure did."
And everyone's so nice because that's how it is in the Midwest. For my friends in the Midwest,
Right.
dude, no matter what happens, everyone's so nice. And then the only people who aren't nice in the movie are the people who aren't originally from there, or I assume
Yeah,
the antagonist. And even William H. Macy, who's probably the this maybe second worst person in the movie as far as people goes. He's so nice through all of this to the men threatening
uh-huh.
to kill his wife and the men threatening to kill him. He's just so nice to them. And his father-in-law, who's like just so demeaning to him, and he's still so
Yeah,
nice to everybody. And the customers who are like yelling at him about the clear coat, or he's just so nice to everybody
yeah.
because they just can't help it in the Midwest. They're just so polite to everybody.
And I love that they pulled that they showed you when it comes they started that whole clear coat conversation where he gets up and he walks out because he's gonna go talk to his manager, like the classic, car salesman thing. I'm gonna go talk to my manager. And he just walks in the back room and just starts talking to somebody else for a few minutes, and
Yeah,
then comes back out and he's like, "Here's what I can do for you,"
I,
like you don't already know
and I
that,
think that
like
scene probably exposed the car industry. And then also for me, like whenever I've ever bought a car, I'm thinking about that scene. I'm like, this is what's gonna
100%.
happen, and it happens. And
I'm so lucky to have a friend that is in car sales, so when I needed to get a new car, I just went to him and I said, "Hey, bro, here's what I wanna pay for my monthly payments. What you got for me?" And, like, I showed up the next day, we signed the paperwork, he did the
yeah,
whole, "Here's what my boss is gonna say, here's what we're gonna," like, in and out and done within a couple of hours because like,
yeah,
I knew him, I'm like, "Please don't we're not gonna fuck around, like, just
yeah.
this is what I wanna pay, like, let's go because I can't do it. I can't do it." It's the worst.
Yep, yep. And back then, the customers couldn't look stuff up on the internet, so you just had to go
Yeah.
basically what the car salesman said, and but no, that if we talk about like favorite scenes, like that's probably one of my favorite scenes. Like the car, the clear coat scene,
Mhm.
cars, that scene. I love that one. I love obviously. I think the wood chipper scene has to be the one of the iconic ones, even though that's
Oh, for
very
sure.
very easy. I also love the scene where she's interviewing the two blonde girls in the bar.
The 2
Funny
hooker.
looking one, like that one's iconic. And that's one of those ones that's like so comedic out of the blue, like either unintentionally, I think, but
Right.
so great. Those are probably my three of my favorite scenes in it.
That would be no first. That one I actually almost had that one as one of my top 3 because I think the ending of it is I think the ending of her, like, finding Peter Stormare and then driving away with him and the she says at the beginning, "All for what? Just a little bit of money." And
Mhm.
then she says it again at the end, like, just this disappointment in
Yes.
her voice and her face, and it's just oh, it's so good. Um I also really liked the scene in when, they're going out and they're finding all the bodies, and then she just stands over to the side, she's like, oh no, and he's like, "Are you okay?" She's like,
Yeah.
yeah, just a little bit of morning sickness. It
Mhm.
passed." And then
It's
just,
not
like,
the dead bodies, it's just the pregnancy. Yeah.
it's the morning sickness.
And also, they never
Um,
really talk about there's, like, what, y $920,000 in a briefcase buried in the
yeah,
snow somewhere. We never find out what happens
we
to it.
never find out what happens to it.
Buried in the snow
I kind of love that actually, that, like, it just because it really is, it's just like, this guy is like and then Steve Buscemi, who literally has now gotten the shit kicked out of him for the last
somewhere. Mhm.
45 minutes of this movie. He got his ass beat by, the whatever, repairman who,
Yep.
set him up with William H.
Yeah.
Macy, um, and then he gets shot in the face. Like, he has all these things happen to him, and he goes and he buries this money when he realizes there's $1 million in it, and then he goes back to Peter Stormare, "I'm taking the money," and
Yep.
because it's only he think it's the only 80,000, and
Yep.
then he dies, and it's like,
With an
y'all
axe. Hit with an
yeah,
axe.
with
Yep.
just hits him, and then he goes into the wood chipper. I also love the scene where, Frances McDormand is, interrogating William H. Macy
Yes.
at the at the car
Very
dealership.
nicely again, very nice.
Again, again, and, like,
The most
even William
polite
H. Macy,
interrogation
like,
ever.
he's trying not to be he's not trying to be rude, he's like, "You're darn tootin' I'm cooperating."
He's just making it so bad. He's just terrible at lying.
He's so bad, and then, when he's like, "I'll go do a lot count right now," and she's sitting there, and then she sees the car driver, she's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, he's running.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Oh, he's running."
Yeah. I also think
It's
the
so good.
kidnapping scene is very, like, realistic and terrifying. Like, this woman is, like, literally fighting for her life, these 2 grown men, and see the way she sees him coming in through the window, looking through the window and
Mhm.
shit, like, that is scary. Like, that's some
And she's just
scary
watching, like,
stuff.
she's just seeing them happen, and then when they think she jumped out the window, but she's just in the shower curtains, and
Yeah.
she comes running
Oh,
out
yeah.
the way that, like, to make it look like this sped up and, like, she's
Mhm.
insane was I think I let out a very loud,
Yeah.
like, because
Yeah.
it
Like,
startled
why am I
me.
laughing at this? Like, yeah.
As she falls down the stairs and knocks herself out. It was awesome. Um, all in all, really fun movie. I'm really glad that I got to finally experience this one and kind of add to my Coen Brothers list because I think so. Besides like this, the only other Coen Brothers movie I've seen other than the three that I had mentioned being my top three, and this one is Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Oh, yeah, another iconic
Which
one.
I mean,
I
incredible.
love
Like,
that. It's not my favorite.
no,
Another one of those is like bunch of stuff happens, then it ends. But I
yeah,
do like the whimsicalness of it. It just doesn't. The performances are great,
mhm,
but it just doesn't like stick with me as much. The song is great. Another one with the music.
yeah,
The song is great, but really, like the song is the best part about the movie.
100%,
And
absolutely,
Fargo, we can named 100 things we love about it. Big Lebowski,
right.
100 things loved about it. Our Brother Out Though, great movie, but really, if it wasn't for that, if that song wasn't as good, the movie probably would have been pretty forgettable.
No,
That
for
song
sure.
was on the radio; you couldn't escape it.
You couldn't
It was
escape
like
it. It was
topping the chart.
everywhere.
Yep,
The Soggy Bottom Boys.
yep,
You could not move it. So, I'm really glad that I'm able to expand more in my Coen brothers. I definitely want to watch more. A lot of people when I asked, like I had posted on Twitter, like
mm,
asking people for their top 3 Coen brothers movie, and a lot of them did say like Burn After Reading. So I think that's one that I'm probably gonna have to cover on here
I
at some point.
it's
So if you want to come back and talk about that one, you're more than welcome to.
and if you like Brad Pitt, it's probably one of Brad Pitt's best performances, and he's playing one of those roles that he's never done before. It's a very unique
Sure.
Brad Pitt role. Because every Brad Pitt movie, you kind of feel like he's Brad Pitt. Like
Right.
Brad Pitt is kind of like just like Tom Cruise is just Tom Cruise. Like there's
Right.
sometimes in like in Tropic Thunder, where Tom Cruise is not Tom Cruise.
Right.
Most of the time, Tom Cruise is Tom Cruise, and Brad Pitt. That's one of his roles where he's playing something super unique, and
Uh-huh.
he's very funny. And Brad Pitt is not usually too funny in movies, but
I
um,
think that's something the Coen brothers do really, really well is the people that they cast for their movies are not typically actors that I would expect to play certain roles, like
mhm,
George Clooney in Oh Brother, Where Art
yeah,
Thou? Um, honestly, like Oscar Isaac and Adam Driver and Justin Timberlake, all 3 of them with Inside Llewellyn Davis, like,
yeah,
not people that I expect to do the movies that they're doing, but are so right and perform the role perfectly.
yeah,
Um, so with all this being said, in our discussion on Fargo, I think now is kind of the time to go into my Letterboxd account and rate it out of 5 stars. And I would say for Fargo, I mean, the more that I think on it, like I'd give it 5 stars. I think
mhm,
this is another 5-star film
yeah,
for me,
for sure,
for sure, which has been really fun. I've watched a lot of really good flicks
yeah,
so far this year for this podcast, which is making things much better than last year. I watched some stinkers, but it's okay. But yeah, no, I would give this one 5 stars. This is probably gonna be in I mean, it's still early, but I would probably say, with, like, my list, like, ranking wise, this would probably be in at least in the top 5
mhm,
for
mhm,
sure
mhm,
out of everything that I've watched.
for sure.
Um, it was really, really good. Well, Drew, before we get out of here, please tell all my tens of listeners where they can find you and what you have going on.
Oh, for sure. It's super easy to find. You don't have to worry about me. Go follow at We Are Felicity, Felicity. We Are Felicity. We're that. That's us on every social media. We are very active on Instagram, TikTok, and trying to be more active on Twitter. But yeah, if you could follow us there, and if you ever want to talk about movies, need movie recommendations, let us know. We have a we all are very combined, very big movie buffs, especially me. But also, if you like pop punk, hard rock, or old school emo music. You might dig some of our music we make too, or some of the memes we make. So
Big, big fan of everything that Felicity does. I post a lot, I share a lot from these guys because you
yeah,
guys are incredible. And of course, thank you to everyone who is watching here on Flick and Reel's YouTube page or listening wherever you get your audio podcast. If you are watching on YouTube, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, that thumbs up really, really helps us with the algorithm. Leave your thoughts in the comments on Fargo, on Coen Brothers in general, or just on this episode. You can also please subscribe, rate, and review on whatever audio platform you're listening to us on. You can follow the show on Twitter at Reels Like Movies, and you can follow me at Allison Salamone. And until next time, my friends, be safe, and I'm going to go watch some more movies. See ya.